everyone, Peter Hewitt, la-artistino. I hope you've all had a wonderful holiday season and are ready for the challenges that you'll meet in 2019, and hopefully it'll be lots of fun colouring challenges. Now, you may recall a couple of years ago I featured a book on this channel by the artist Konstantinos Liaramantzas from Greece, and he put out this beautiful book, the Greek colouring book, which remains one of my favourite colouring books, by the way. Well, he's released his next book and I'm very excited to show you. I've been watching the progress of this book on his Instagram account and really looking forward to actually getting my hands on it and having a bit of a colour. Now, this book is called Cats and Dogs, An Exquisite Colourful Journey. And just as a side note, Konstantinos also sent me some lovely Greek chocolate. It looks like it's orange flavoured, which I'm dying to try out. So thank you very much, because I absolutely love chocolate. Now, this book is a lovely book themed with cats and dogs. It is printed by Phoenix Amulet Publishing, and if you know anything about publishing groups, this is a fairly recent group which is picking up a lot of wonderful colouring book artists and to distribute their work through. So keep an eye on this particular company. This is out of Portland, Oregon in the US, and I will supply a link below for the website for them and for this particular book so that you'll know where you can get it locally. As you can see, this is themed cats and dogs, and if I turn this page over, it's got a little bashed about in the mail on the way here. It was well padded. I just think that, you know, it just had a particularly rough journey. But this is just like an outer cover, which is actually covering a spiral bound book. And for those people who love spiral bound books, because they lie nice and flat, and I'm one of them, as long as the picture doesn't cross over both pages. This one, as I said, has got this protective little cover on, so that when you put it into your bookshelf, it still looks nice and neat, which I love. Let's get into the book. Now, the paper, to start off with, is a decent thickness. It's not the thickest paper I've ever seen, but it's definitely decent for a colouring book. And I like it. It seems to have a nice small to medium tooth, which is perfect for me for pencils. Now, I've done some testing on the paper so that you can see exactly how the different colouring mediums will react to it. We'll have a closer look at this. Across the top here, I've tested a number of different types of pencils. We'll get in a little closer and I will show you what they look like. Starting from the top, Crayola Pencils. These are just your normal, you know, garden variety Crayola. They performed okay. They're a bit light on, but then remember that Crayola is a children's brand and doesn't have much pigment anyway. But I think if that's all you've got, you'll get some nice results in this book with it. I've got the Durand Studio pencils, which are exactly the same as the Durand Artist pencils. They're just a different size core. It has the same, you know, composition in the core. They were quite nice as well. Some Creative Place, you may not know those pencils. They come out in Aldi in Australia. I'm not sure if you can get them in Europe, but I gave them a go to just because I happen to have them on me and I like those. These are the Faber-Castell Gold Faber, which is their craft quality pencils. They were fantastic, and I am a fan of the Gold Faber anyway, but I do like them on this paper. Prismacolor works very well as well, but my favourite on this paper was Polychromos. Big surprise there. I love my Polychromos, but these work really well on this paper. I've got the Luminance as well. I found they were a little bit difficult to get a nice flat layer with those. They come out a little bit of a weird blotchy texture, but I think if we worked on it and burnished it, you would be all right. I've got the Supracolor 2s there as well. I know they're an up-and-coming pencil. Some people love them. I've got a few of them because I like some of the colours they've got in their range that I can't get in other range. But, they're a pencil that is dissolvable in water, so they're a watercolour pencil, and they were very nice on this paper too. Back over this side, I wanted to test how this paper reacts to using a liquid blending medium. So I've got two little squares here of Crayola, just plain old Crayola, same as up here, to see how it would work. And I used this one, which is Art Spectrum odorless solvent, which just happens to be the one that I can get locally. There are lots of other different brands that you can use. And I was very happy with this. It worked very well with this paper. The blending medium blended down quite nicely. I've got a light patch there, and then I've got a darker, sort of like more densely pigmented piece that I did with more, putting down a few more layers of pencil. And I found afterwards with the Crayola, I could even go back and reapply another layer of Crayola over the top after the paper had dried, of course. Here I did a little bit of blending just with the Crayola pencils, and as you can see, the Crayola pencils work fine on here. They're not as heavily pigmented as some of the others, but if you wanted to use Crayola in this book, go for it, because they will work just fine. Here I repeated the same experiment with Polychromos pencils just to see how it would go with a high-end pencil, and the results were just as good. I had a light layer of pencil here, I had a much darker layer of pencil here, and this is just the pencil without the solvent on it at all. So very happy with all that. Here I was experimenting with another set of pencils that I have with just some dry blending, and that worked out well. That's a set of pencils I'm about to film a review on, so we'll just leave that for later. Now, coming back to more wet medium, down here I tried the Tombow brush pen markers, the watercolor markers. That's with the great big thick brush pens. They worked fine, as well as my set of Staedtler twin tip watercolor markers. The only thing that I found with this paper was it was a bit hard to get a nice even layer. It does lay down very streaky, so I wouldn't recommend Tombows or other watercolor markers in this book for that reason. The alcohol markers were perfectly fine, and alcohol markers are pretty much of muchness, and all the Copic sort of ones I find act very, very similar, and you'd have to just experiment with your own brand to see how they react. But they were also the only one of all of the mediums that I tested that actually bled through the page. Also, I can show it here. As you can see here, it's bled straight through, which you expect with alcohol markers. It just comes with the territory. As this book is all single-sided, go for broke. Use your alcohol markers because you won't be wrecking anything on the other side. Just remember to slip a piece of paper underneath first so that you don't contaminate the picture underneath. Moving right along, I decided to test my favourite Inktense pencils by Durand, and these is my three little experiments here. And one thing which I wasn't prepared for, and I was pleasantly surprised, is the Inktense dissolves completely on this paper. In other books that I've worked in, the Magical City for example, the Inktense sort of sets almost the minute that you put the water on it, and you're left with some texture from the Inktense. You don't get it with this. The Inktense dissolves just completely straight away, and I guess that's because this paper resists the absorbing the pigment for a few seconds, which allows you time to mush it around a little bit, and therefore you're not going to get the pencil marks with it as long as you're fast. So that is worth pursuing, and certainly in future I want to colour a picture in here complete with Inktense to see what sort of results I can get. Now, moving along, I decided to try some watercolours. These are just the Pelican watercolours. They're a cheap student set that I have, which I enjoy. They're a little bit like gouache in that they're opaque, but they're not all the way like gouache. They're not as thick and opaque like gouache is. That worked fine. Applying it with very wet, applying it with a brush was fine. I tried my high-end Daniel Smith watercolours. They were lovely. Again, with the surface of the paper resisting the absorption of the paint for a few seconds after you put it on, it does give the paint time to move around a little bit on the surface, which is great because you can have create some lovely special effects with the watercolours doing that, as long as you're fast. This isn't watercolour paper, so it's not going to act like watercolour paper, but it's a step up from your normal colouring paper. So if you like your watercolours, play around with this paper as well and see what you can get out of it. The last thing I tried was gouache, and this was just a cheap gouache made by a local company here in Australia. It was just, I bought a set for about $7.50, I think I paid for it, but I wanted to have a go with it. And again, I like how it turned out. This is fairly light layer of it, but it sat very nicely on the paper. Down the bottom here, the Gouache Neocolor 2s, which are becoming very popular, particularly for background use. Once again, just like the Inktense pencils, this dissolved completely. So if you like to have a complete, nice, creamy look to your application of the Neocolor 2s, you're going to get it with this. Next, I use some acrylic dabbers. I can't remember the brand, but they've got kind of a foam top on them, and you just squeeze and dab the paint out. I love the texture it gave, and that set very nicely on the paper. This was my Twinkling H2Os. They're little pots of micro-infused paint, which are very, very pigmented. That went on nicely, and I don't know if it'll pick it up, but there is a lovely sheen to it too, and it sat really nicely on the paper. I had no problems getting down on there. And finally, some acrylic paint. This just happens to be gold acrylic paint that I had lying around. It's only the one layer, so it's not nice and thick. If I wanted to make it completely opaque and smooth, I'd put a second layer over the top. But not unhappy how that sat. Now, as for how the paper reacted to being wet, if I turn it over, you'll find that it's, keeping in mind these are only very small patches of wet paper. I was happy with the way it dried, fairly flat. Now this book hasn't been put under any pressure, so I haven't squished it down to try and smooth the paper out. It's just been allowed to dry as it sat, and I'm really happy. You can feel on the back there's a bit of rippling, but it's not really overt either. And I'm sure if I was colouring a whole page with the watercolours or any other wet medium, I could squash that fairly flat. You'd still end up with some rippling afterwards, but I don't think it'd be very bad. Now, okay, so that's how everything works on here. I'll just draw out so we can have a look at the pickies. Okay, now another feature of this book that I forgot to mention is that all of these pages are perforated, which is wonderful. It makes it really easy to tear the pages off, and Konstantinos has been very careful in setting up the printing of this page. There is no artwork that actually crosses that perforated line, and it's all very nicely centered. So if you want to take your pictures out and display them or work on them outside the book, you can certainly do that. Alright, now let's go and have a look at all the pictures. Okay, this one here is the title, the front cover page, nice and clean so that you can have a go at colouring it in yourself. The print here varies a little bit on this paper, and I will go into it later on. Most of it is very crisp, but you can see some of the line drawings, it looks like it might be more pencil markish, so that they look a little bit disjointed. It's not detrimental to the artwork at all. In fact, it's a feature of the artwork, but just keep it in mind if you're expecting crisp lines everywhere. It's not necessarily all crisp lines. Now this picture is very cute. I think it features a large dog and a little snail-sized dog with a snail shell. This particular motif of a dog or a cat with a snail shell is repeated a couple of times in this book. Okay, and as a pair to that picture, you've got a large cat and a lot of little ant-sized cats on the flowers. There's a lovely picture of a whale with lots of dogs swimming around. It looks like they're asleep actually. Now this book features a variety of pictures in that you have got entire scenes which fill up the page, or you've got smaller motifs in the centre. Some of them have thicker lines, some have thinner lines, some of them are quite complex and some of them are less so. Actually, this one's not very complex at all, and leaves a lot of room for you to come up with your own interpretations of, say, well, how to do the background or how to colour the balloon itself. So there's a big variety of different pictures depending on how you're feeling, you know, that particular day when you sit down to colour, whether you want something more complex or something rather quick. There you go. There's a picture set in Venice by the looks of it. This one I love. Isn't this wonderful? This is a flower power sort of one. So invites lots of beautiful colours reflective of the 1960s, this picture. And one of the more simplified pictures. This one wouldn't take very long to colour in. And this one's an interesting one. I really like this one. This is one of the ones that I was initially thinking of colouring in when I was choosing a picture to colour for this book, which, by the way, I do have one to show you further along. This one's cool. I've got an idea already about how I'm going to colour this one. And a very magical looking one with a magician cat and a lot of sleeping dogs by the looks of it. Oh, look, and there's a burglar standing on top of that rooftop. There's a story there somewhere. Here's a space themed one. I sometimes wonder if some of these pictures don't actually have stories attached to them. One of the things I love about the pictures in this book is that they do look like they've got a story behind them. So you could colour in, and while you're colouring in, your mind can be working on the story which this picture comes from. This is an interesting one. This angel dog, or winged dog here, is releasing little, I guess, dog angels and birds and dog and little angel cats, all from these vases. But below him are dinosaurs in a prehistoric world. So I'd love to hear the story that you come up with that. Is a very fantasy based one with a brave dog facing down a dragon. There's castles in the background. This one's another interesting one. It's full of giraffes as well. And well, I assume that's an Afghan hound looking at the nose and all of the long sweeping fur here. I can see people doing rainbow ombres on this long sweeping fur from the Afghan. It's a nice outdoor look. One of the things that you'll notice with some of these full page scenes is that Konstantinos uses a sort of a fish eye lens when he creates them. So they've got a sort of a round look to them, which I love. It gives the picture a bit more life and a bit more depth. There's a gnome there, and another gnome. There's some dogs and cats out having a fire in the woods there, like they're going out camping and toasting their marshmallows. This is a picture that I've seen completed, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. It's sort of a bit of a fantasy based one with the big castle. I like this one too. This is another one that I was debating whether to colour first. I love the beach scene outside, and you've got this beach house which looks absolutely cosy, comfortable. I would love to live in a house like this. I'm very, very sea orientated. I love the beach, I love the ocean. It's another beautiful picture here. Who doesn't like sitting in bed reading? And this one. Well, this series of pictures that he's got just here, I love every single one of them. They're just beautiful. And another one along the same vein. And then we go back here to one of the simplified ones. Nice, quick and easy drawing. And this one of a lounge. Oh, you've got a fish tank here. I hadn't noticed that before. Another simple one with a bird bath. Oh. An outdoor one. And this looks almost like a detective to me. I like this one. It's cool. Actually, he's going hunting maybe. He's got kitties all hiding in these little burrows. I think if I was to draw this, I would get really anal and I'd do all the little pebbles under the ground as well. Give it a nice texture. This is a North American Indian themed one. Ooh, that looks like something out of Alice in Wonderland, doesn't it? And some very British looking dogs watching. Oh, and there's lots of little balls down the bottom. Oh, that's great for a nice big pop of colour all around the back, the bottom of the picture. Here we've got another full page picture. This is gorgeous. This is the entrance to a big hotel, I think. Ah, hello there, and there's a doctor's surgery. And a hairdresser for pooches. This is a really cute one, bit of a romantic one. That'd be a good one to do on Valentine's Day. Ooh, Valentine's Day is coming up, isn't it? February. I might do that. Another very simple one. Ah, and here's the one that I coloured. I love this one. Probably coloured this one because I have a daughter who's absolutely stark raving mad on unicorns. So when I saw this one, I had to do this one for her. This one is coloured with Faber-Castell Polychromos Pencils, and well, as a result, they work very well with this. I found that when burnishing, you're still left with a very fine white speckling texture, which is very easy to get rid of using the solvent. And I demonstrated that on this teal coloured sky, but I left the trees by the way they were, and the same with the horse, because quite frankly the speckled look I think adds to the picture. For me, this is a pencil drawing. I like it to look like a pencil drawing. I had no problems with layering at all and creating nice textures with the trunks of the trees with this, and putting the white gel pen over the top. It was an absolute dream to colour in on this paper. I loved it. So definitely you can go for it with the polychromes as well. Now you'll see here I've got a little kitty sticker here. That didn't come with the book. While I had it out on my desk, I was actually cooking tea at the time. I don't know how I did it, but I got a tiny little gravy stain on the paper that I couldn't get rid of, so I hid it underneath a little kitty sticker. Alright, this one, big scary cat and a couple of very frightened looking mice. And here we've got that dog and snail shell theme that I mentioned earlier. Here again. And this looks like this begs lots and lots of colours, I think. Now the one thing I will mention with some of this, because you might pick it up, is some of the paper there appears to be a little bit of ink detritus, sort of like a speckling from the ink process. It's very light. It doesn't bother me, particularly if you colour over the top. It won't be a problem. But I just thought I would mention that with the printing of this page, there is this slight speckling. Oh, hello. Oh, I hate to be picky, but I think he's forgotten to rub out some pencil marks here in this flower. Doesn't matter, it's very, very tiny. It'll just add texture to the picture when you colour it in. Oh, and we've got some holiday theme ones. We've got Halloween and a Christmas kitty. That's, ooh, I might do that next Christmas. I don't colour in the Christmas theme ones outside of the Christmas period. It just doesn't feel right to me. And another Christmas themed one. And now these last two pages are very special. I'll have to pull the book back a little bit so you can see them properly. But if I open this page, you will find it is a big 2-page spread. And there's two of these. This is the first one, which features a skydiving dog, and also dogs and cats riding birds. That's one. And the second one is this one, which I think is a lovely theme, and that is the evolution of cats. You've got the house cat, and you've got a small wild cat, and then you've got a lion. It could be a leopard, I think. And over the other side, you've got a small house dog. You've got a larger feral dog, I guess, something like a dingo, and then you've got the wolf as well. Lovely. And we've got this lovely sort of wavy, flamey look all around it for texture, with lots of little cat heads in this side and lots of little dog heads on this side. So that really invites a lot of creativity on how to handle that picture. And that is the last picture in this book. Now my book, when it was mailed to me, came with a piece of card here, which is perfect. I've been using that to place in between the pages so that I don't damage the page underneath when I'm working on it. So that's handy, that just came with it. And that is my review of this book, Cats and Dogs, An Exquisite Colourful Journey. I will leave links below as to where you can purchase it, and I hope you've enjoyed this little walk through this lovely new colouring book of mine. I'm going to go back to colouring it now that this is finished. I hope you're having fun with any colouring adventures that you're currently on, and happy colouring. I hope you're enjoying any colouring adventures that you are currently on, and until next time, happy colouring!